Season 6, Episode 42, number 260 of the Decoded Podcast, Summer School Edition. Clough and I have had quite a morning already. I'm going to speak for Chris for a moment.
Please do. Please do.
Actually, I'll just speak for me. So we
Okay.
start the morning off. Chris and I are texting back and forth about getting onto the pod.
We're in the green room. That's
we're
where
in
we're
the
in the green room,
we're in the
right?
green
Because
room.
we got our own snacks and coffee. I put out a fruit tray for myself this morning, so
I kind of make fun of Chris, and then my computer decides it's not going to boot up. Okay, so then the computer finally boots. We come into the second green room, closer to publication,
yeah.
and or to broadcasting, I should say. And then we realize we've not podcasted in 2 weeks, and
Yeah.
so we've got a lot to say and a lot of catching up to do. So anyway, we're here now. It's 8:30 a.m. Eastern time. I hate saying the time because then when people watch it after, it dates us. I don't like dating us, I don't like that. But nevertheless, long
Dude,
story
our
short,
content is evergreen, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You listen to this stuff in the middle of winter, or you listen to this stuff, on Easter break. You listen to the stuff while you're on the toilet one morning. It's evergreen. It works no matter the context. That's the kind of vitamins that we're throwing down. So
throwing down vitamins. I like that. Okay,
like bird seed. Here you go.
so we started hot with
Mhm.
a hot topic. Okay, I'm going to flip a coin, Chris. Figuratively, I'm going to flip a coin. I'm going to let you decide the fate of this podcast episode. Do you want to start hot or do you want to start cold?
Mm. Well, it don't matter.
Oh.
Because the universal is that when it starts to cool, one of us is going to throw, another kind of like ember underneath it just to try and get that simmer up a bit. So let's start hot. Go in hot.
Okay.
Anybody listening? Anybody?
We have 2 listeners.
I love it.
Hello, we have 2
listeners.
people. They're watching, listening, whatever. We're on somewhere on their feed, so that's cool.
They're pod blog viewers. Creating words one at a time.
Right, as we pod tube.
Okay, take us in.
Okay, we're starting hot, so here we go. There have been some tweets. There have been some tweets on Twitter, because that's where you tweet, about teachers. I'm going to struggle with the language, so I'm going to just be very blunt, I guess, in my approach. I'm going to polarize it so it's easier to understand. So if you don't agree with my language, you don't agree with my language.
Hot. Sorry, I said we're starting hot. So
I let you pick. Yeah. Heads, we're starting hot.
And re-entry is always hot. So take us in.
You got it. And then when you splash down, it's cold, right? Okay. There have been tweets about a particular educator in Ontario that's being recognized for the equity work that they're doing in their classroom. They're with primary students, elementary age students. So there's like the right-wing folk who are saying, like, look at what this left-wing teacher's doing. It's like, it's extreme. Is this what we want in our public education system? And then you've got the left-wing folk who are like, no, the time is now to like value everybody's voice, no matter what you look like or where you come from. And unfortunately, for me, the rub is that it seems to me like it's the white people who are being upset because of the talk on the left-hand side of white privilege and things of that nature. Okay. You and I had a great discussion on the on-ramp today about this. This is where I land. Okay. Racialized educator who works in a predominantly white system, but works with disadvantaged students who are not all white. Okay. And before that, I was in a classroom in an inner city school where I would venture to say the number 85% of the student body was black. So I've been working for the last like 6 or 7 years in a script that's been flipped, right? I'm in a white district, but working in schools and with kids who are predominantly not white. I just wanted to kind of give you some flavor there. So for the last, 6, 7 years, that's been my experience. But let me take you back before that. It was me working in schools with predominantly white folk, which is great. But let me tell you what happened to me in elementary school. So when I was in elementary school, I'm a racialized individual, and I spoke a different language other than English. My English wasn't that good because I spoke Arabic at home, and I had Arabic food in my lunch bag, and my reality wasn't the same as many of the other students in my class who were. Um, I'm going to refer to them as white. They may not identify that way, but anybody who walked into class and would look at the class would be like, "Oh, it's mostly white." And then there's Roland, and then there was Matthew who was black. Okay, nobody cared in a positive way about the food I ate, the color of my skin, the language I spoke. I was always, I felt as though I was always an other. Roland was always other. And I was never celebrated for any of my differences. I was made fun of, and I was singled out for my differences. Okay. Of course, there were times here and there where it was positive, but it got to the point, I'll tell you, where I didn't want any attention on me. I don't care if you came over and you're like, "Oh, pita bread, I love no, no. Don't talk about what I'm eating." That's that's what happened to me. That's how far in I got to where no, no, don't even recognize me for the positive. Just keep me off the radar because when I'm on the radar, it's negative. I'm being made fun of for whatever, right? Because my narrative was not the same as the general population in my class or my school. So when I hear people talking about teaching equitable and inclusive type stuff, which I tend to lean on that side, and then I hear the other side say, you can't do that, you can't talk about this, and you shouldn't be talking about this. I'm like, I try to listen and I try to be respectful of listening to both extreme sides. But here's where I land based on my experience. I land with a kid that's sitting in front of me and maybe is not feeling so great about who they are or where they come from or what they look like because they're different. And I've seen that that difference causes mental health issues. We can start with the low level stuff, just sadness. They're sad. Nobody wants to play with them. Nobody, people are making fun of the food I eat, Mr. C, or whatever the case is, right? And it's like, that's not cool. As a teacher, my approach has always been we are going to celebrate all of you for what you bring to the table because you all bring something important to the table. And if you're a doofus, then you'll pay for that too, right? Like it's not that's how I operated my classroom. And I told you this, I called it a family, and because I'm in a Catholic system, I use that faith is like interconnected with everything we do and how we do it. So there's a lot of the faith built in to the operating system of the classroom and the way I operate, and so I use that as the lessons and the examples to help us move forward. Let me tell you though, the bottom line for me is this: when you're dealing with other humans, my approach has always been you're respectful and you come from a place of wonder to to learn about the other human, their good qualities, their bad qualities. How do you operate with other people? Yes, you're going to run into people who look different, who speak different languages, who eat different foods. And yes, you could make fun of them. But I'll tell you, you gain a lot more from learning about their culture and deciding for yourself what you like and what you don't like. And that's completely different than a person's personality, right? Like I could meet a white person who is a truly awesome person. And I could meet a white person who is a completely awful person. This is life. This can happen with your skin color being any color. your culture being any culture. So it's like, it just upsets me that the right, the extreme right, is like, you can't do that stuff. You can't talk about white privilege and colonialism. Why not? I am a product of all that. And now I'm seeing that, I won't call it brainwashing, but some of the things I experienced was, your narrative doesn't matter here. This narrative does. So if you buy into this narrative over here, colonialism, whatever you want to call it, we'll try to accept you. But if you're not, then we're going to make fun of you until we break you. That's my idea of what happened when I was in school. And so I learned, hey, Roland, adapt. Figure out what you have to do and adapt. And I did. I did. I earned a degree. I earned 3 degrees. None of them are in equity. They're all in the traditional colonial system. I'm part of one now, colonial school board. 99% of them are. How do I operate? Right? There's policies and procedures everywhere. How were they made? As a practitioner and as somebody who's into equity and inclusion, I think about this all the time, about these policies and procedures. But at the end of the day, if I have a student in front of me who is suffering because they don't belong or they don't feel included, I don't care what their sexual orientation is. I don't care what their culture is. I don't care what they eat or what their skin color is. What I care about is, how are we operating to help you fulfill your destiny as a human? What are we doing to help you move forward and be a productive member of this society? That's what I'm dealing with. It doesn't matter right, left, it doesn't matter. What am I going to do? Oh, you're non-binary? Well, I don't believe in any of that. So tough. We'll send you to the next re-engagement teacher. Which, like, no, no, that's not happening. These are the facts. You're telling me this. Okay, let me see what I can do, because my job here is to support you. The politics go out the window for me. The politics come into play once I start to move in a direction where I'm trying to get them help. Because then you start to see, well, we can't do that because there's a policy that says this is how we operate. And I'm like, but that's not going to work for this kid. So you're going to follow a policy that's going to break the kid more? And it's like, that's where you start to get Roland's a bit of a lefty, if that's the flavor or whatever. And even if the right side of me doesn't agree with what is being presented in front of me, I put that aside, or at least that's what I've been doing. I've been putting it aside and saying, oh, this ideology or whatever's got to live over here for now, because in front of me right now, in practice, I have a student who is suffering and struggling. I can see it, I can hear it. And it's been years upon years of layer, layer, layer against the kid. And now they're like, hey, this kid needs help. Can you help him? Yeah, we broke them over the last 8 years, or them. We broke them. And now you'd like me to build them back up, but you don't want to change policy or procedure or attitude. Come on, man. So that's me coming in hot. I'm landing based on my personal experience as a student who was not treated positively for anything about me that was different. When I fit in, it was great. Even the last thing I'll say is, a few years ago, I was going back and forth with an old elementary school friend who lived down the street from my mom's house. We were buddies forever. And when I started talking white privilege on Facebook, he shot back at me. He's white and he doesn't come from privilege. So he doesn't understand this whole the idea, the concept, okay? So as I was trying to explain it to him, his thing was, you lived in a bigger house. You had this and you had that. I'm like, when you look at each individual, it tells a different story. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can talk about, like, the bigger story, right? He was like, I'm out. I'm not doing this. And then boom, unfriended me. And that's fine. That's fine. He can do that. I can't deny my lived experience. I can't deny it. Yeah, we lived in a nice big house. Okay. My father worked hard to get us into that house. My father was treated like shit because his English was poor, the job he did. But he was a worker. He would grind. He was a hustler. That's what he did. It doesn't mean that everything was a-okay. It just means that he was able to get by and find a way. And that's something he taught me. Find the way. Don't let all that get in the way. Find a way. Adapt. And I have, but now I'm in a place where I'm operating a little bit differently. But I consider myself fortunate to be in the work that I'm doing because, man, as a classroom teacher, I may have done things in a way that maybe wasn't so great for my class. I'm not aware. What I'm aware of is when I went into teaching and they put 25 kids in front of me and said, go build good people. When I would hear people talk shit to other people, I'd always stop and say, why are you talking like that? I don't understand why we need to talk like that with this human in this situation. I told you I was done. I'm not done. When kids call other kids gay, I'm like, okay, we got to talk about this. You're not saying it in a positive way. So why are you calling them names in the first place? Like, is there another way we can deal with this? And why did you have to pick that word? Like, let's break it down, right? It's because what if they are gay? I mean, it, these conversations when I started teaching, I was scared to get into them. I'm not scared anymore. I'm not scared because I come at it with a from a place of wonder. I really do. And the kids look at you funny. They're like, "You're here to hammer me." I'm not hammering anything. I'm asking you a question. You're going to have the balls to talk like that to another person. I'm going to ask you why because I can. Why are we talking like that? Why are we using words like that in negative ways? Why are you doing that? How is this person acting? And then, there have been times where we've broken it down into, oh, I could think of five, six other words that are more appropriate to call that person if you choose to take that route than the one you chose. Because you don't know who's around you. You don't know who's being alienated. That's why we shouldn't be calling anybody names. Because it's only going to harm people. It's not going to help them. That's kind of been my approach. So, and I told you, I'm not walking into classrooms and saying, okay, grade two, sit down, get your books out. We're going to talk about white privilege today. I'm not doing that either. I'm approaching it in a manner where I believe I'm trying to help people become better people by showing restraint and respect. I think I'm done. Thanks for listening.
Caught me with my mute down. Had my mute down there. Um, my brain started to think about the new school that I'm going into. There's a whole lot that when I dare to say that I'm an ally, activist, resistor, breaker of things. My time spent noticing what the operant culture is as a new space, I've come to appreciate um, the value of patience to sort of see what's kind of going on. I tend to be a jump in kind of a guy. I do it on this pod all the time. Maybe that's my season 7. That's my season 7 homework is to find a way to be more because I have the awareness of me jumping in. Sometimes I don't have the self-control to keep myself from jumping in. I get too excited about conversations, and this as a personal narrative for you, I can appreciate because I think you mentioned this morning we've known each other now for 8 years. I can appreciate the all the connective tissue that wraps around these types of stories. You going into the re-engagement work, there's from the jump, there was the potential that your personal narrative was going to play was going to be a major a major ingredient, like a feature ingredient in the recipe of how you were going to do the works. Like just coming into this portfolio, um, it was like it was just kind of waiting there for you. So your stories around this and how you approach wellness and belonging and mattering in your classrooms and your extended classroom space as you do this work. Um, there's like I got nothing to sort of apart. I got nothing apart from just I'll throw the sort of hype and respect your way for doing that work because the returning to those moments through other kids' narratives, and you've mentioned this before, seeing yourself in your own classrooms, I think is a I think that I wish that for more teachers than fewer, because I think one of the key things you mentioned there is that curiosity, that opportunity to actually learn something from the individual in front of you that you don't actually have any tools to kind of like figure out. It's only through that person, that experience in that moment, excuse me, that if you're able to notice it and pause for a moment and not jump to a comment right away, because jumping to the comment automatically, like the comment, I mean, you can be as bad at questioning as you are at commenting. So either way, you can. I worked a lot with that on my students because they have, sorry, genuine curiosity about the world around them. The way that they activate that, though, is can be problematic. Um, I'll use a quick example. So the classroom that I was in last year, and the students that I was working with, they have very clear curiosity about the world around them and a very short walkway between an idea in their head and words coming out of their mouth. It's partially connected with their identity, as in their I work in, I've told you, community classroom. So partially connect, well, it's all their identity, but on paper, it's a part of their IEP, this identifier that there's a high blurt factor. The layer just below that, though, it's driven by curiosity and a genuine need, and an amazing, in general, the kids I worked with across all of them that I worked with last year, like a superpower of noticing, and a superpower of noticing as in this thing is different than what my understanding of the world is. And now I will say again, the kids that I worked with, their understanding of the world is fairly concrete, and they depend on their understanding of the world in order just to sort of maintain their own mental wellness. There are things that physically they'll become reactive in their body and their spirit and their mind when they can't reconcile things that aren't the same as their schema. So we did a lot of work of like, how do you open up some gates on their schema so that they can let in some new information to shape what they already know and help them to sort of tactically build better schema so that as they move forward, they've got more tools to understand what's going on. So in our classroom that I had last year, we were a classroom inside of the library, and the library was the venue for many events. Many events. Um, there was a Holocaust museum presentation and display. There was lots of arts kind of festivals that were in there. There was the GSA held events in there where they had sort of presentations and speakers. There was also there were FNMI events. There was smudging. There were several different drum sessions. Again, according to my kids' identity, different sounds, different smells, different people. Heck, their chair not in the space that they left it in can all challenge their schema and understanding of the world. So we did a lot with the sort of questioning techniques because for them, just the ability to ask a question without automatically boxing it in some way, either a box they already have on the shelf or a box that they're slowly assembling, just for it to be kind of like this free floating bit of knowledge was an amazing process to go through with them. Because in it, I learned a lot about how people categorize and organize their information. I also learned a lot about my own reactivity when there would be a blurt factor and I wanted to move down a disciplinary path to stem it, as opposed to pause in it and realize that the particular word that they're using is because there's a limited list of words that can be used. It's not the actual, because I have too many words on my list, I automatically connect, and then I put the emotionality on it, and then I put the culture on it, and I exist in this cloud of possibility. Then in order for me to sort of do the next thing that I need to do, which is either discipline or learn with them or to pause and meditate, I have to commit to a line. I had to commit to a line. Otherwise, I sound like I've lost my mind. So I realized that my knee-jerk reaction is to move into the disciplinary mode. So one of the events there where smudging was taking place, two of the students, their words were, "Well, this stinks." And we started to work through that. And part of one student was being offensive, is, and they knew the value and the tone of that word. So they were targeting a word. And for them, that's what it was. Further conversation was their intent was not to disrespect, but that's what my mind was. What it was adding the layers to it, right? So I'm dropping my narrative on top of whatever the story they're trying to tell. That's constant work. I have no doubt that me observing the culture in the new school, I'm kind of resetting my own clock on that. And moving into this new school, it's not only a new school that comes with it, there's a new community around it. There's going to be new cultural rules to sort of follow. There's probably some new politics for me to notice. Um, and I've always felt that that's good for me. I've always felt like that type of move is good for me, because what it does is, um, I think I've just made my silo bigger. I'm still doing spec ed. I'm still doing community classrooms. I'm working with students that have some of the identity checkpoints with the students I worked with last year, but they have brand new ones I'll be experiencing and supporting. Here's what I'll bring it back to. I really appreciate your mention of curiosity. It automatically takes me to question and answering. It takes me to, from there, I think about culture. And then I also think about our capacity to sort of exist in that kind of formless moment of prejudgment and the challenges that come with, kind of doing that type of work within equity. And, some of the abrasion that can happen when you get kind of knocked around a bit in that space. The question, the on-ramp for me to you is, like, when you think about equity challenges, how quickly does left and right kind of political thinking come in? And you've very, savvy said, I go to the person. Like, I don't have to go to the philosophy or the political ideology in order to help a human. Last thing I'll say on this. I told you the story yesterday about Doug and helping Doug on the street. I did notice the individual, so brief to individuals, jumping in. I was just out running errands. I was sort of sneaking through a parking lot near the Walmart near my house. I'm having a conversation with Chids here, sending him, we use this tool to kind of convo back and forth, a video chat tool. And the great thing is that's asynchronous. So you can just kind of hit record. I can drive, I can turn it off, no problem, right? Mid-sentence, I jump out of the car and they left the recording going. It was like a found footage, I'm sure, on his end. I don't know how long I was gone. It felt like forever. I was probably only gone for maybe 5-7 minutes, maybe 10 max. What I noticed as I'm sort of like driving through this driveway is an old dude who stumbled down on the ground. I watched him kind of like shuffle step and just boom, hit the ground. What I noticed before that, though, and I didn't put that in the polo, were two cars swerving around, because I noticed the bigness of the car swerving into my lane. And then I was like, that got my attention. And then when the car passed me, there was Doug stumbling off the curb. So how we notice the thing in front of us, right? I think about this, our opportunity to kind of like there were other people that sort of moved through this moment as well. When I got out of the car, hit the hazards, my car's right in the middle of the lane. I just kind of left it there. I thought, well, at least they're gonna have to go around my car to get to us. I kind of parked it. I sort of just zipped and put it right in the middle of the lane, knowing full well, I've seen cops do that. I think I was thinking like that is a cop move just to kind of block the lane enough that you become an inconvenience, which means someone's going to notice you. And if they notice you, then they're going to be like, what the hell's going on? So I think in my mind, I'm like, that's a good way to trigger someone's anger, their emotional state. Get in the way so that the problem that you're working on, you can actually work on it with some protection, some sort of like legitimacy. When I helped Doug up, got him back to his car, he got his wallet. Dude went back to the store. I don't know. I noticed he didn't hit his head. Um, that felt purposeful. It was surprising that it kind of just happened in the middle, but I think that's the power of these moments in our classrooms is that they will pop up right in front of you. You may not actually notice the actual issue. I might not notice that Roland's pissed off in my English classroom, but I should notice when definitely, because that's one small little thing, but I definitely should notice when the traffic starts to move around Roland and not include Roland and not connect with Roland. Like, and I think that's kind of like that's the gift of my experience yesterday with Doug, is it just reminded me like you can notice the traffic around something, the big sweeping kind of things that are happening, but you got to get to Doug. You got to get to that one guy. I physically lifted the dude off the ground. So you can't get much closer than that, right? You can't get much closer than the sort of one to one. I am going to lift you off the ground right now because you being here in the middle of the road, there's still cars trying to get around it. And what was interesting, it wasn't until I put hands on Doug to lift him that two cars stopped because I saw two cars there. I saw two cars there. They pulled up and they stopped when I jumped out of the car. But it wasn't until I put hands on Doug and lifted him that one of the dudes jumped out. And you know who he asked? He asked if he could help me. He didn't ask if he could help Doug. And that was a really fascinating thing because he said, "Can I help you lift him up?" He didn't say, "Can I help him?" And I don't know what to do with that. But I feel like there's a lesson in there that I'm still going to be kind of like pulling apart a little bit as I sort of work through some of the equity work, helping one to one, going directly to help the one to one, and thinking about yours and my conversation in the on ramp about cutting through the politics and just getting to the kid. So you came in hot. This is good. I like it. Hot topic, cold coffee. There we go.
Same here. Yeah, but
Mhm.
we're gonna cool things off in a minute here. And I appreciate you sharing the story about Doug because as I told you yesterday in another message to you, because you and I, it's hilarious how we message back and forth all day on different mediums. I don't know where I'm gonna run into you. Insta, Facebook, used to be Twitter, not anymore. Your vacation's over. Polo, like there's text, WhatsApp, like it's kind of dumb,
Mhm.
but it's kind of cool at the same time. So I I think I told you. So um I grab my phone, I'm getting the vacuum. I'm gonna do some vacuuming and I'm like, oh, there's a couple of polos I need to listen to. So I put my earphones in and I go to get the vacuum and you're talking and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, oh, and then you stop the car and I see you hit the four-way flashers and you get out. And the way you grabbed your forehead, you're like, "Oh," and I'm like, "Oh shoot, did he hit somebody or did somebody run into him? Like, what happened?" And then as you get out of your car and I'm staring at my phone and I look at my wife, I'm like, I think something just happened to Chris." She's like, "What do you mean?" And I'm like, he was talking to me and then he was like, "Oh, oh," and then he stopped and he got out of his car." She's totally confused. I'm like, "It's an app we use. It's asynchronous." She's like, "Asynchronous?" She's like, "Okay, well, text him and find out if he's okay." So as I'm going, then I'm like, "Well, he's gonna come back to his car because he left this running and his car's running. So it's not like he's abandoned his vehicle. He will be back at some point. And I guess the polo's just gonna go on until he comes and turns it off." So you're right. It was about 4 to 6 minutes, I would say. And as I'm kind of waiting and I'm like, okay, I should find my personal phone and send you a message or whatever. I get my phone and my wife's like, "Did you message him yet?" I'm like, "No." And then I get my phone and then you get back in the car and then you just go back to then you explain. I'm like, "Oh, he's fine. He's fine. He was helping somebody." Um But it was that moment of like, what? Yeah, like found footage. Like, check out his polo. It'll tell you everything you need to know about what happened. Um, Funny thing though, I went all legalistic, and I'm like, if he did something wrong, he better not tell me, because then I'm gonna know what he did, and I don't want to know.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
it's like the see that's where like the black ops stuff come into place for me.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like, oh, he better not tell me anything, and that's the first one. The second one is, I've told you this. When I see people in distress, unfortunately, I don't jump to help them right away. I look around and I try to get a vibe for my surroundings, because I'm concerned that it's a setup and something bad's going to happen to me or my
Hmm.
loved ones. That is a distraction. So I don't know where that comes from. Maybe watching too many spy flicks or whatever. But yeah, I always look around and I'm like, what's going on here? What's happening in my surroundings? Um, like, I'm scared to death in some ways that my wife will fall for one of those, like a note on her windshield, and then she doesn't get in the car and she checks the note, and like, I worry about that stuff. I don't, but I do. Like, now that I'm talking to you about it, it's like, I hope that doesn't happen to us. But um yeah, things like that. I'm like, okay, so this guy fell into the middle of the road or whatever. I'm not doing anything until I have an idea of what's happening around me, and that I feel I can do this in a safe manner. But anyway, so good morning to Gary. Gary says he's enjoying the conversation and reflection.
Morning, Gary.
Thanks for being with us, Gary. So I'm going to cool
Hmm.
things down pretty quick,
Do
and
it.
maybe not, because so this is cool to me, but it might still be a hot topic. So you made me laugh out loud with your Instagram posts. So you recently went on a trip, and you've been slowly releasing a story to your
Hmm.
followers.
Does that
And
work? Just be. Is it working?
I'm
Are you at
enjoying it.
all? Are you at all curious about the next chapter?
I'm not like I'm not dying, but I'm
Okay.
like, okay, I know what Chris is doing here, and I'm
You see my
enjoying.
moves. You see
Yeah,
the
yeah,
moves. Okay.
I
Okay.
see it and I like it.
Okay.
Um,
Cool.
so you dropped yesterday's story, and I'm not gonna go in depth, because maybe people want to follow you on Instagram and read about it.
Hmm.
But yesterday you dropped that you and your family went to Krispy Kreme donuts when you were in the States.
I knew that would trigger you. As I'm
Okay.
writing that part out, I was like, "This is going to trigger." And if I could have done the same thing about a burger deal, so
All
go
right.
ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Chris and his family, they go to Krispy Kreme, and they're doing the thing. They're waiting in the long 20-minute line, and like, none of that. I think that's all fantastic. That's like grist for the mill for people like you and I at this point. But
Yep.
you're playing the game. You're getting sucked into the Krispy Kreme for a number of different reasons, which you are fully aware of, which is fine. But this is the funny part. So you get to pay, and they say to you, for 86 cents, you can get a whole other dozen donuts, because it's their 86th anniversary or whatever, right? So I smile, because I'm like, no, Clough. I knew right away. I'm like, this is where the rubber hits the road. Clough is like, it's not happening. So you say in your writing, you're like, yeah. I'm like, nope. And your family's looking at you like you're friggin' insane. And then you provide in your writing the reasons why, like, we're going to barely be able to eat a dozen, so we're going to have another dozen. And like, you go into like the depth of it, like the waste and this and that. So right away, I'm talking trash about you in my head. I'm like, Clough, for real, bro, like, 86 cents, not going to hurt anybody. It's going to make your kids happy. So so I respond to you twice. The first response is, are you friggin' kidding me, Chris? You're killing me, bro. I called you a monster. You're a
Yep.
friggin' monster. So bloop, publish. I send you that one. But then the next one is, you're a genius. Jocko Willink and David Goggins just gave you a hat tip. As Jocko likes to say, donuts are sugar coated lies. And so you're living your best life, in that we do not need another dozen donuts. I don't care. Even if they said, here, take them for free, you're the guy that's like, nope, give them to the next person. I'm not taking these, as your two kids are in the back seat ready to kill you.
Yep.
So this is me coming in cold. I loved it. I'm like, this is friggin' awesome. I get to talk trash, and then a minute later, I'm giving you the friggin' salute because, that's the discipline equals freedom part of kind of the philosophical life you and I are trying to live. But I was like, oh, Jocko would be like giving you a big bear hug, Goggins giving you a bear hug, but your
No
kids
bear
now.
hugs.
I don't talk to your kids, but this is something I might drop on them if I ever get to chat with them and just say, tell me a little bit
Well, do
about
it the
your
next time the Fortnite. The next time you're sort of gaming Jake, like ask him. You feel free to throw that his way, like and set him up, set me up, bait the hook. See if you see because we can do that sometimes as teachers, as investigators. That sort of like, how do I get the full story here? And almost like reverse the interrogation, like that guided interview. How do I get the truth here?
I
Um,
Can I throw an aside before you jump in? I just
yeah,
want to
do
throw
it.
an aside because, yeah, so I do play Fortnite and I'm getting back into it these days. I haven't played in a while, but before I stopped, there were times where I just jump on and your son might be on using your
Yeah,
account, right?
yeah.
And you're okay with me interacting with him and playing a game or two. And
Mhm.
I always let you know. So I just want to give people a flavor for your son in terms of like his ethics. So whenever I would find him there and we'd play, I'd always say, where are your parents? Like, do they know what you're doing? Um, like full trans. He's like, yeah, 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 they know. And then I'm like, okay, and we'd play, and then if it was a long game, I'd be like, okay, um, are you done for today? And then I would, I would get the silence. Like, I only have 30 minutes, my parents said, but I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be part of your 45-minute. Like, I'm not doing that. Because it's just funny how old is Jake? He's like in grade 8, right? Or,
Yeah, this year going into 8. Yep.
okay, so it's the same age as Will. Okay, so he's in a moment of life where he's getting the dopamine hits, and you and your wife are doing your best to teach him how to be a human, right? Like, don't always go for the cheap dopamine. Like, there's
How to
other things,
manage it, right? How to
right?
manage those hits, yeah.
So I guess what I'm trying to bring to people is I see him as like a good kid in that he has that conflict inside of him. Like all good kids should have the, oh shoot, I really want that hit, but I've also been given direction on how to operate here. So knowing knowing that about him, because a couple times I'm like, I'm out. I'm not playing with you because you're gonna go over your time, and I'm not gonna be part of that. That's a decision you're gonna make on your own. I don't want it to be, well, I was playing with Roland. I'm not just gonna dump Roland, am I? And then you're like, what the frig? You got this 47-year-old man making this kid play. Like, no.
So he gets 45 minutes, that's the deal. And
Okay,
it
and they're
has never changed, and part of it
oh, okay.
is I don't put limits on the YouTube stuff. I don't actually put the limits on their streaming, but I do place limits on that, um, mostly because it's a singularity. Like, it is that one compulsion is to go play that game.
Right,
So
right.
part of that is I'm always aware of not letting it take up too much space in his day.
Even there's
Yeah.
been times where I'm playing and he's on and you're not home. You and your wife are out. And I remember one time you joked because what my practice is whenever I'm playing Fortnite with your son, I text you and say, hey, I'm playing Fortnite with your son right now. And there have been times you've responded with, hey, thanks for babysitting, kind of thing. Like, well, we know what he's doing and where he is now that
He
you've let us
enjoys
know.
talking with you too. That's the thing. Like, he has a good time chatting with you, and that's always I like the intergenerational friendship. I think that's important. He and the fact that you both are landing in a fun space. It's not a kid's game, it's not an adult's game. It's just a game that anybody can kind of play. And there's been lots of great moments like you've shared about he's learning how to be helpful, how to be collaborative. And I know enough about you that you're even when you're playing, you're mentoring, you're sort of fathering, like you're doing the good stuff. So I appreciate when I say babysitting, I know there's way more. No,
It's
I say that, and I have said that jokingly, but the part of it is I say that also with the confidence that there's more vitamins coming through the game than just that, right?
so one of the things I like to play with is the time thing. Because I'm like,
Hmm,
hey,
hmm.
bro, are you done? Like, because you and your wife are not home. he can easily just keep going. Dopamine, 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 right? Like, and then there's silence. And I'm like, there it is. That's what happens when you're in grade 6, 7, or 8 and
Yep.
you're a good person. You're like, shit, I'm done. I'm done, but I could keep going. Nobody's here. Nobody's gonna know, right? So I'm hoping I get that same conflict with him when I talk about the Krispy Kreme donuts.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
hoping he's like, ah, frig, I know my dad's a good person. We didn't need another dozen donuts, but for God's sake, it was 86 cents. They were giving it away. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Now with your daughter, I don't know her very well, and she doesn't know me, but this is what I'm looking for if it ever comes up. I want to see that conflict because I've seen it in your kid with Fortnite. I want to see it with the donuts. Um, but yeah, so in my mind, you're a monster, but you're also like disciplined AF, and you stick with your values. Like you were talking about waste. We're going to toss this food. Like we can't possibly eat it. And then do we want to be eating 24 donuts? Like really? Is that what we want to do to ourselves? So I love the layers, but I'm going to land with you're a friggin' monster, but you live by your values. So you can be both. You can be both.
That's the conflict, right? And just to sort of, and we're not closing this one out, the context within which that this is happening is you challenging me. I was talking about hotel coffee. So that was I don't know if this happened before I left or at some point. You had said it would be awesome for me to do some sort of like a vlog on coffee. Now, traveling and being with the fam, being able to sort of commit to vlogging about coffee, like there's a certain amount of titillation and kind of excitement just to drop a video and kind of do it flat and fast and just kind of drop it and kind of go. But what I found was as I was writing about coffees and I got to cup 9, I could probably do cup 10. I do have a cup 10 that I could do, but I might end with cup 9. Um, and there was something about the writing where I thought to myself, it's not just about writing about a cup of coffee anymore. Like there's more story happening here. Now, admittedly, I kind of went from 0 to hero on this because if you look at like cup 7 and 8, it's kind of like light. And all of a sudden, cup 9, I'm like, here's a big story. And I didn't expect the moments that are being tied into this particular Krispy Kreme. The Krispy Kreme conversation is important because it sets up the aha moment in chapter 4. So in chapter 4, which likely will be the last one, this flashback of Krispy Kreme is happening while we're sitting in a presentation, a timeshare presentation with Holiday Inn. So what you identified about living according to values and sort of trying to be disciplined in thinking and still have fun and still enjoy life and be present, really that's the key, the thread that kind of is flowing through this multi-chapter Insta post, is going to be, I'm going to tie it up with chapter 4, but I like how some people are dropping comments on it like this is kind of funny to like don't they see a decision coming at me as the character in the story. And Beth, one of my friends from teaching back in the day, I think is she bomb with a number or something like that. Anyway, she commented on this. She's like, don't do it. Don't do it. She knows the decision that's creeping at me in the broader story of this. But yeah, I have that other one drafted out. But part of the reason that I went to just some things happened with Insta, and it's just I'll do a sidestep here, just with my understanding and my usage of social media. So I've left Twitter again, and I'm exploring Threads. I don't have a trade in for Twitter. I'll admit that flat out. Like I don't have a thing that clearly will get me some of the technical professional information that I crave once in a while. But I thought to myself, I can take a pause on that for a little. So I'm taking I'm taking time away from researching and just going into design and developing. Like I have to go into start getting some of my courseware ready for September. So I think I have enough. I have enough of what my previous inquiry was looking at: AI, spec ed, equity, supporting diverse learners. That was the reason that brought me back. I have enough. I have enough I need to start building something. I need to start doing something with it. So that was my first reason. But also back to Insta. So that was what got me to walk away from Twitter right now. Testing out Threads, seeing how I like it. I'm kind of still neutral. I'm neutral on it. I don't have a. I'm sitting at number 5. It's passable, 5 out of 10. Um, but what I started to realize is that there's things about Insta that I don't understand, and I only realized I still don't know, and I haven't Googled this, but I've only just realized the character count that Insta sets on their posts. And what's interesting is that Insta doesn't. So the script, so any of the copy that you write on a photo, it's basically labeled as description. Like your picture description is too long, which I ran into with chapter 1 on this. So I had to actually scale it back. And I didn't actually look to see. I could probably do it right now. I don't know what the character count is, but I know that Threads is 500 characters. So they give you 500 characters there, which has been really cool in some of the poetry. The July, I'm just kind of slowly working on a July chapbook that I just have sitting there as a thread on my Threads account. 500 characters there, but I don't know what the character count is on Insta. So I want to look that up because that's changed my chaptering of the story. Because I kind of just keep writing, kind of getting to a space, and then I'm doing the writing of it in my Apple Notes because I have my phone with me. It's easy for me to kind of pound on that. And the other thing I've discovered is that if I copy and paste text from Apple Notes into the Instagram description, then I can do paragraphs. You can't do paragraphing natively if you're typing right on Instagram. It doesn't work. It just does it as a long description. So I didn't know that about the on mobile versus the desktop experience. But if you copy and paste text in, now the one thing I didn't try is I don't think it lets you do. I don't think you can do. I forget what it's called, but you can't do rich characters. Like you can't do a bold, and you can't do italic. I don't think it'll let you do it in there. Anyways, figuring out my use of Insta has been fascinating because it's changed how I've told this story. Because I've had to create different breakpoints that make you want to read the next chapter, like that sort of what's it called? That teaser, that cliffhanger, to sort of have a cliffhanger on there. And I like this because I don't write many stories. I tend, if I do poetry, they tend to be like narrative poetry, so I kind of creep up to it. But this has kind of made me think about using Insta in a different way. That I might start doing more stories and just have them as like multi-chapter pieces. So it's I like it. I like how it's kind of activated some creativity for me there.
That's cool. Uh, and I'm digging the way you're using it. And like I said earlier, you and I are constantly communicating, so it's just neat to see you communicating um, in different ways or trying different things. Um, and you're learning about the tool. I have to tell you, Threads. I'm not digging it. I find at the moment I find I'm responding to people often and nobody's responding to me, so it's kind of boring. Um, so I've kind of stepped, not walked away, but like I'm not using it every day like I started. But I need to take my own advice and be consistent, and then just see what comes of it. But I've gotten so used to on Twitter. Um, I'm constantly interacting with people. Like people respond to tweets, and the crypto NFT community is big on the good mornings and the good evenings. And it's like you respond to them, they'll respond to you, and I like that. I like that because I've actually there's a lot of people now I'm connecting with and learning about what they do and how they do it because of that back and forth, right? So I'm not getting that from Threads. So I was kind of sad to see you leave the Twitter, but it's a momentary sadness because I know how you roll, and if it's not working for you, it's not working for you. So you got to do what you got to do. Um, Rochelle is welcome. Rochelle, thanks for checking us out. She says that sounds interesting, Chris.
The storytelling, the
I I,
chaptering.
I want to say that, but I don't
Mhm.
know for sure. She'll tell us if we're wrong.
Rochelle,
Uh,
check the story. Check the story. Tell me what you think. Give me some feedback if you want, or not, or not.
And
Yeah,
so in one of the chapters, so as Chris is um doing his writing and sharing with the world, he's also kind of updating me on his cups of coffee, like
yeah.
the good coffee, the coffee he's had, and then his breakdown of it. And in one of them, you're in the hotel, and there's the coffee machine isn't working or something. It's out of order, or they're servicing something, and you say something about should you litigate? And I'm like, first get your coffee and then litigate. So it's like choose your own adventure. Chris is asking
Mhm.
questions. I'm like, no, bro, go get a drink, get your drink, and then cause some difficulty for the place. So I was kind of like having fun with your story writing and your sharing. But the Krispy Kreme was like it was just like I knew exactly where it was going. And maybe I was going to be wrong, but again, I'm like, no, this is how Chris, this is the foundation he's laid in front of me. The I You've told me enough about your values and your thinking and your movement in a certain direction that as soon as you said they were going to give us a box for 86 cents, I was like, no, Chris is going to spoil this. He's not going to do this. He is not. Now, had you said that you did, then I would have just had a smile on my face because I would have been like, cool, cool. The kids get more donuts. Yes, it's gluttonous. Yes, it's probably wasteful, but this is where both of us differ in the way we operate. I'm okay with that at that moment in time, which says a lot about my character and whatever. Um, and also, it's like I don't know if that's a battle that I want to take with my family in the car in the States. Like, I don't know. So, but you're like, nope, it's not happening. I'm not doing it. But anyway, I liked it. I loved it. I was like, you monster. And then I'm like, oh, sugar coated lies. Chris landed where he should land. Anyway, okay, let's keep going because I gotta go soon. Rochelle
Yep,
dropped a
yep.
comment. Rochelle said Spec Ed and AI. I am doing Spec Ed part 2 right now.
Nice, nice. Rochelle, I challenge you. I challenge you. Rochelle, you've set it up. So I'll tell you, back in the day when I took my part two in spec ed, right, is all about the assessing. It's really the heart of it, part two. What are the academic, cognitive, some of the assessments that you can do? They talk a little bit. Okay, from my experience, they may have changed the content a little bit, but part one is like, here you go, here's the buffet, here's spec ed. Let's get you good on writing an IEP. Let's get you familiar with the IPRC process, maybe ISTM. Let's get you familiar with some identities. When I took it, there was no equity. There was no sort of intersectionality of how spec ed kind of like, wove through all different identities. There was no talk of culture. There was no intent of sort of like power structures, all these kind of things that happen within Spec Ed 2, Spec Ed 1. So Spec Ed 2, you start to get a taste of what the tests are. And then Spec Ed 3 is about the leadership. Here's the thing, Rochelle. I would love, and you're like, I don't know if they're partway through or because I'm partway through, partway done. It all means different stuff, right? But Rochelle, my use of Twitter, this most recent stop, was to try and find discussions that looked at the possibility of including AI tools on an IEP. And what could that look like? We're already using adaptive technology, if we want to call it that. So we could call it adaptive intelligence if you want. That's my AI, right? But what are the tools that could be listed, on that page as far as strategies, as far as our environmental accommodations, our assessment accommodations, instructional accommodations. Like, how could we include? And I'll tell you, Rochelle, I could not find any long form discussions that were satisfactory to me. I did a lot of research, found out a lot about tools, played with a lot of different tools myself. Did not move too far into text to image stuff, was staying basically in just text based ones, but I thought those are useful. So yeah, here's a challenge to you, Rochelle. And if you find anything that you're sort of like, that's kind of cool, please reach out, connect with me. I'm not on Twitter anymore. Well, I'm not on Twitter right now, but Chids could pass along my Gmail to you if that's a thing. That's not a problem. You can just message it here, drop in for another coffee on a Saturday morning and just say, hey, Clef, here's what I found. But I'm happy to continue. I will still be continuing the discussion. I think I'm gonna start digging in and doing stuff. I'm just gonna be suggesting it. I'm gonna look for opportunities because I don't know, Rochelle, if you're here from the beginning of the pod, but I'm moving into a brand new school, brand new culture. Don't even know what because as Chiz has said, like there's layers here. So there's going to be the community culture, there's going to be the school culture, there's going to be the like the idio cultures. So the mini kind of ones that are happening in the school. I'm gonna have department culture. I got my own culture coming in, my own learning, my own narrative. I'm gonna have that all coming in. So it's going to be pretty vibrant, I imagine, this whole year. But I'm going to start when we get to IEP writing. I'm going to introduce that. I'm going to put that in there. I'm going to be a little bit, I'm going to agitate. And I'm going to say, is anybody going to be putting in the identifying of using ChatGPT for students to get their drafting or to develop their questioning or to sort of like do their attribution, or how true is this information? Are we going to be doing that? And who knows where I get with it? But I would love to hear that as part of the, something that you get into that course. And you know what, Rochelle? If they're not satisfying conversations, I'm always happy to continue it with you if you want to chat with me about it. Love it.
Coolio.
Yep.
Rochelle said that she will check out your story too, which is awesome.
Okay.
I actually yesterday, I don't know what I was doing, but I was like, I should take Spec Ed Part 2. It just hit me, but I don't know if it'll happen. I really am enjoying spending my time facilitating courses instead of taking them, so we'll see what happens. But anyway, it's on the radar.
Mm-hmm.
Bro, it's 9:31. I'm a minute late. Here we go again, dropping times. I don't like dropping times. But any final words before we shut this one down?
No. What's the date today? How about that? July
Today
22nd.
is the 22nd, and on the 26th, we're doing Foodapalooza in York Region.
Yep.
Looking forward to that.
That's cool.
What did we have drawn today? Oh, it's a typewriter. Can you read what it says? It
At
says
the top?
Yeah, it says your story, and then I can't read the other
Underneath
stuff.
it just keeps saying over and over again, my narrative, my
Oh,
narrative, my narrative,
oh.
my narrative. And the bottom bar says make space. It's the make space bar. So we're making space for other people's story without letting our narrative. I don't often, I'm like, it's so not like me. I just sort of, I don't often do the description, but that's what I was thinking. I was thinking of this idea of how quickly we are to sort of make, I think that we're making a space safer by using our narrative to understand somebody else's story. So I think that's kind of like my message in there.
I like it. I appreciate it. I'd like to think that in my work I am making space for people. Again, whether I agree with their narrative or not, at the moment, I don't have my luxury is that I just get to see them and work with them to move forward. So anyway, okay. Coming in hot, leaving cold. No coffee left in the cup.
No coffee left. I actually didn't get to any of my water, so I'm gonna sip that. I think we're gonna go to the farmers market, which I'm kind of stoked for.
Have an awesome time at the farmers market.
For sure. All right. Peace, bro.
So yeah, this was season 6, episode 42, number 260, summer school edition. Hopefully we'll be back next weekend, but we'll just be back at some point.
We will be back. Stay tuned.